Hey guys, welcome back to the Psalms to God YouTube channel. I know it's been a minute since I've created a video for you guys, but fear not, I am still here and still trying to make content. So recently I started a new journal and that's what I'm going to show you guys today. I have a little bit about how I made it. I did not film me actually making it, so I'm going to insert some pictures here and talk about it, and then I'm going to show you me setting it up. So hope you guys enjoy. So I found this pack of vinyl scrap sheets on Amazon that I bought, and they're not really straight or perfect, but I cut them down to size because they're not big enough for 8.5 by 11. And this is what you see here. I used these clips to try to line them up so that I could cut them so that they would be exactly the same size. I do not recommend using the clips because it does dent it. Eventually I switched to washi tape. But once I lined them up, I used basic bookbinding thread, which is just kind of like this waxy thread, and a needle to sew them together. My cat ended up trying to help me sew them together, but that's probably the most time consuming part. Having made a couple of notebooks with these types of covers, I have found that there are a couple of things that make it particularly difficult. I learned that it's easier to keep it together if I glue in the chipboard first, which is what I'm doing here. I also found out it's really hard to get the needle through the chipboard and the fabric. So as you can see, there's a small border around the chipboard. I'm actually sewing in the border because it's easier to sew. And because it's so thick, it's typically hard to punch the holes after the fact. So I punched each layer individually, and I don't actually have the chipboard in with the holes. At the end of it, I decided I wanted to get fancy and put this little pocket, and I thought I was going to have the pocket tuck in from the left. Turns out to not be so functional, which you'll see at the end of the video, but I left it there just for cute sake. And I ended up creating a front pocket as well. These sheets that I'm showing you here are misprints. They went through the printer and I cut them and everything. And then when I actually started putting the notebook together, I realized that one side was blank and one side had dots on it. But I didn't want to waste the paper, so I decided to try to create like a little folder pocket to go in the front of the notebook. So I just used a ruler, cut off a piece of the front page, and then glued it together with glue tape. So that's what you'll see me doing here. Once I actually did this part, I realized that the white on white was very hard to see. It, like the shadowing and all of that. So I end up going back and adding some color around where it is so I can actually see where the hole is. This pocket turned out to be a lot more functional than the one in the back. It's still a little hard to open, but I suspect that that will improve over time. The more I use it, the easier it will be to open. That's my goal. And now I have things in it to kind of stretch it and hopefully make it stay open longer. So once I finished the pocket, I just bound it. I put the pocket in the front of the journal and then added the cover and the back page, and then just wound the coil through the holes so that it would be like a normal notebook. And then I was able to start setting it up. So this journal I plan to do a little differently than I typically do my war binders and my journals. Instead of it being just kind of a random war binder with me putting studies in it as I choose or as they come to my head, I decided to focus in on the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I spend a lot of time in the Old Testament and in prophecy because those interest me and because generally I don't see people talking about them as much. But it's always good to have range. You're supposed to study the whole of the Bible, not just small portions. So I thought it was time to dedicate some time to the Gospels. So that's what I'm going to be studying in this journal. For those who are curious, I still have pages in my old journal, which I will be using if I decide to study something else to take a break from the Gospels. But I will still be putting the same kind of variety of pages in here, like word studies or lists or sermons. It's just they will all be pertaining to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and or John. One of the things I'm really looking forward to as I do this journal and this, I guess, different style of journaling is that I bought a chronological Bible a long time ago. Pause and side note for those who may not be familiar, the Bible is not in chronological order. Not only is like the whole of the Bible, like the books aren't necessarily in chronological order, but even within books, sometimes the time jumps back and forth and it makes it a little bit more difficult to understand what's happening. So a while back, I bought what's called a chronological Bible where they attempt to put the events in order. And I say attempt because scholars debate on where certain things go, so it's not 100% foolproof, but it's closer. And what's really interesting about the one that I bought is that for things like the Gospels, they're actually interleaved. So if there's a parable or a story or a passage that's given in, say, Matthew, and it's also told by Mark or Luke, they come back to back to back, as opposed to you having to flip to the next chapter or the next book to find it. It makes it difficult to use that Bible, for instance, like at church, like at a sermon, or at like just a general Bible study, because it's very difficult to flip to what you're looking for. But in terms of studying the Gospels, I think it'll be really beneficial. So I plan to utilize that to the fullest extent. I plan to do basically like daily devotions or daily Bible studies, just going through passage by passage and making the studies up as I go with that. In the beginning of the journal, as you can see, I started setting up pages for each of the books. I plan to do kind of like a summary overview here, talk a little bit about each of the authors, who wrote the book, when it was written, what the overall theme of that book is. And I kind of want to look at how each person, like, what their angle was. It sounds so weird to say angle, but each person has a different underlying motivation for how they're writing. Like, for instance, a lot of people talk about how John is about like the relationship. So John focuses more on like the divinity of Christ and the relationship that we should have with him. Whereas, for instance, like Matthew and Luke provide the lineage, which is kind of more about like saying who he is. So I kind of wanted to see like how they differ and like what was like the overall goal that each author was trying to tell us. And that's what I put up front. And now that I have all that set up, there's nothing but actually putting in the studies. So I hope you enjoyed it, and that you will like, subscribe. Bear with me. I'm still getting set up. I still have to move. So there will be still a little bit of delay in content for the next, like, probably month or so. But hopefully sometime around November, I will be all set in a place with better lighting and hopefully not moving anytime soon in the next, like, decade. And then I will be able to film content more regularly. But thank you for tuning in. Let me know what you think of my new journal and what you've been studying lately. And I will see you guys soon. Bye.